Welcome back, YouTube. Welcome to another wonderful day in the Communist Republic of Kentucky, or the United Socialist States of America. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, we're in America, but unfortunately, the way the government is going. We'll talk a minute about how to build wealth, how my great-grandparents done it, how they built wealth solidly. My great-grandpa, he started out when he was 12 years old, started working. And he worked in a sawmill, 12 years old, worked hard for his money. And he did that to help support his family and to save up money himself. And by the time he was 14 years old, okay, I got that wrong. He started working earlier than that because he only had a 3rd or 4th grade education. And by the time he was 12 years old, he had earned enough money to buy the office. The sawmill was moving, so they were selling the office. They were moving to a different location because those days, the 1920s and 30s, they tore down their office, or they moved their office and their sawmill to whatever location they were logging. That way, because they didn't have the means to transport the timber, the logs, over long distances. For someone who's not been around that, they may not understand that, because now you see trucks, hauling logs everywhere, up and down the interstate, all over the place, or coast to coast, even. Maybe, lumber anyway, coast to coast. I don't know about logs, but unless it's veneering or something like that. But anyway, and by the time he was 12 years old, he had earned enough money to buy that office building for the lumber company. And he had that office building tore down. He paid guys to do it. 12 years old now. Paid them to tear down that office building. Now, mind you, it wasn't nothing big and fancy. It was just like a one-room office building, big enough to run their little logging company out of. He had that tore down and had that hauled to my great-great-grandfather's house, and he added it on to his house and moved his grandpa and grandma into it. His grandpa was Lewis Davis. He fought for both sides of the Civil War, the South and the North. He was a doctor. He wasn't I guess a soldier, so to say, but he was a doctor. Civil War for both sides. I think the South twice, or maybe the North, then the South, then the North. I don't know, but he was kind of back and forth in there. And when he finished his career, he was on the side of the North. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The war is not what everybody thinks it is anyway. It's only made about slavery after the fact that a bunch of European armies were setting off our borders and trying to make alliances with Mexico to invade. So then they had to make it about slavery by a genius move from Abe Lincoln, because the moral aspects of it, none of the European armies would come in then, because the people wouldn't have supported it. The European people wouldn't have supported it. Slavery had been abolished for generations there, so they weren't going to support something like that. So that put the backing back behind the Union, and the states lost their rights. lost their power. And it all went to the central government or the federal government. Back to my great-grandpa. Back to that story and quit chasing rabbits here. He done that by the time he was 12. He eventually paid for his grandpa's farm. Not long after that, and married my great-grandmother. Now this is the great-grandparents that pretty much raised me. Yeah, my dad, my grandpa, and my great-grandpa, they all farmed together. And by the time I came along, my great-grandpa, he done a lot of stuff on the main farm, but he didn't get out much on the other farms. Most of that work was done by my grandpa and my dad and the work hands. So that left me there with my great-grandpa to learn from him how to hunt, how to fish, stuff about money, financial stuff, how to run things. And that's how I came to know him. I had him up until my mid-20s. And my great-grandma up until my mid-20s. Most of my great-grandparents, anyway, I had up until my 20s. I think I was 21, 22 when my grandpa Davis died. So, but my great-grandma was well up to my mid-20s. And, but anyway, that's how he did it. He started off, he went and he bought cows. And when he bought a farm, he would log it and pay for it. And he'd buy cows, put cows on it. He'd also till every inch of it that he could. He done it by mule and by hand. Planted corn. He'd sell that corn or tobacco, and he would take that money and he would reinvest it into something else. How do we do that today? You have a job. What do you do with that job? You don't go out and buy liabilities. You don't go buy cars and sneakers and jeans and jewelry and crap. You go out and you buy assets. Assets that produce cash flow. Assets that'll return a profit. That's how you do it. When they would get that done, when they would get their return on their investments, their crops, or whatever, they'd go buy other animals. And they had done that for years and years and years. And they'd buy different farms, and they would log it and pay for it. And it took time. It didn't happen overnight. It took time. But eventually, when they would get a big crop in, so they went out and sell a bunch of calves, or a bunch of sheep, or a bunch of pigs, or a bunch of chickens. My grandma raised chickens too. I forgot about that. And they raised vegetables. And when they get these big checks rolling in from all this produce and tobacco and cattle and chickens and pigs and sheep, from the wool and from the lambs, they would take that and they'd buy rental property. They'd go out and put a down payment on the rental. And what would they do with that rental? They'd rent it out every month. And that's how they built wealth. And they would, every time they'd get a big check in, they'd pay that sucker off. And then they'd go buy another one. And the next thing you know, they had several rentals. I don't remember exactly how many, but they had a lot of rental property. And then after they got all the rental property that they wanted, that they could handle, I guess, they started buying bonds. I never know my grandpa being in the stock market. But when he passed, there was several $100,000 bonds that either had matured or was going to mature. But see, him and Grandma worked together. And that's something you don't see today. They were a team. And they worked together, and they utilized networking, and they utilized family. And you may say, well, how'd they utilize family? Well, when my grandpa would see a bunch of cattle coming up for sale, and he knew he could make some money on them, he would call his brothers and see which one wanted to go in on him. He always started with the oldest and went to the youngest. Always did. Some of them didn't stay here after the feud. Some of them got out of Kentucky altogether, went to Indiana, went to other places. A lot of the widows got the boys out because, the feud. They didn't want somebody knowing, hey, that this is the guy here that shot your daddy, and that boy having to grow up looking at that guy that shot his daddy all his life. So a lot of the widows, they got them out of here. Got the kids out of here. Keep them safe. Keep them out of trouble. That's just the way it was. But for like my grandpa, my great-grandpa, and his brothers and stuff, they come out of it unscathed and alive, thankfully. They worked together. What eventually became the main farm. My great-grandpa, when he was bidding on it, other people started trying to bid on it. And there was other people there that was from the feud. And my grandpa hollered at one of them. Said, hey, look, this guy's running up the price on us. Because, family went in and helped my great-grandpa buy it. Families worked together to try to build wealth for one another. Help each other build wealth. They weren't jealous of one another. They weren't envious. They wanted to see everybody succeed and everybody get ahead. Excuse me. And that's the way I am. I want to see everybody do better than me. But anyway, this guy was bidding against my great-grandpa, trying to get the farm and running up the price on him. And he hollered at the Koger guy. That Koger guy looked at that guy and pointed at him, and called him by name and said, what the heck's the matter with you? And that guy shut up and quit bidding, and my grandpa's bid went through, and they bought the farm. I think they give like $50-something thousand, $54,000 to $57,000 for that farm, somewhere around in there. Because at the same time, the Raintree Inn mansion was for sale. And I think it was like $24,000 or something like that. And today, the Raintree Inn, which it was a movie filmed there, Raintree County. Raintree County was filmed there. And it isn't as worth as much as what my grandpa's farm's worth now. That farm's worth millions of dollars. And that inn is not worth nowhere near as much. But the thing is, they utilized their networks. To build wealth, you have got to utilize your networks. If you win, everybody wins. You understand what I'm saying? You want to bring value to the people in your life, to your network. You want to help them win. And people ain't like they used to be. I understand that. But people need to be like they used to be. Especially as the government comes against us. We have got to be more dependent on each other. And that's one thing the government doesn't want to do. Why do you think they're working so hard to divide us? Because if we don't rely on one another and depend on one another and work together, then who do we depend on other than the government? And that's what the government wants. They want us dependent on them. And we need to be self-reliant and partner with our families, our friends, our neighbors, and people work together to build a life for themselves and for each other. That's the only way to win. And you know what? That's a pretty good legacy to leave, too. And that's how my great-grandpa built a lot of wealth. He worked his butt off. He started off with his job at an early age and made enough money for him to go in business for himself. And that's what a job is. A lot of these people get out and they work and they live paycheck to paycheck. As soon as they get their paycheck, they run out and spend everything that they have. They don't use their job for what it's supposed to be. The job is for you to launch yourself. That's what the job's for. It's for you to get some money, learn how to work, learn some skills, and launch yourself. A job is funding. It's funding. It's funding for your future. Using a job, it's how you start your business. Using your job, your money from your job should be going towards, your investments. It should be funding everything else except your lifestyle. Your assets should fund your lifestyle. Now, is that easy? No, that's not easy. Am I there yet 100%? No, I'm not there yet 100%. I was at one time.